Monument Networks Induced Through Lighting Design in Urban Environments by Skandali and Whitlock Blundell. The concept of this project evolved from a research proposal regarding wayfinding for monument networks generated through lighting design in Thessaloniki in northern Greece. The necessity for such a project emerged from the inconsistent lighting proposals and applications in the plethora of monuments and historic buildings the city of Thessaloniki has, which is why it is used as a prototype for this concept of lighting-induced perceptual monument promenades. Historic buildings and sites from different eras and cultures are integral parts of cities. They stand as a reminder of a place's past and its identity. However, these structures are often isolated within the urban landscape for a variety of reasons, and therefore exhaust their impact on passers-by almost immediately. This is especially true during the night when they tend to blend into obscurity if not properly highlighted. As a result, the visitor's mind is unable to make mental and spatial connections between these detached samples, hindering their enjoyment of a foreign place and augmenting their confusion. Furthermore, even locals may feel detached from their historic surroundings, even parts of their own identity, leading perhaps to a fragmentation of their sense of community. This paper will focus on A. Wayfinding strategies for conceptual pathway formation within the urban spatial narrative, and B. on how lighting design can assist with the interconnection between cultural elements in a city's historic center. In order to forge associations between them, a perceptual architectural promenade should be specifically designed, distinguishable within the urban fabric so as to retain the visitor's attention and allowing for the necessary time to draw correlations within the different elements of an urban cityscape. This way, subliminal sensations related to the culture in question can be created, fostering solidarity and promoting both the monument's unique nature and its part of a distinguishable whole. The American geographer Kevin Lynch, who brought the usage of wayfinding into modernity, defined it as a consistent use and organization of definite sensory cues from the external environment. In the process of wayfinding, the strategic link is the environmental image, the generalized mental picture of the exterior physical world that is held by an individual. This image is a compound product of one's immediate sensation and of past experiences. It is used to interpret information and guide, to construct a pattern of our surroundings. An unobstructed environmental image makes wayfinding much easier. However, a structured environment can act as a framework of activity and knowledge. It has also been mentioned that wayfinding proceeds along paths of observation and integrates knowledge laterally rather than vertically, constructing spatial stories and forms of narrative understanding that proceed from a part to a whole. A key factor which Lynch introduced and helped people get to their destination is what he called mental maps. These are comprised of 5 essential elements: paths, edges, districts, nodes, and landmarks. It is crucial at this point to introduce the fundamental idea of a legible city, as a city whose various parts are or can be organized in a coherent pattern. Or in the case of the research discussed in this paper, a perceptual architectural promenade consisting of otherwise overlooked monuments deprived of the potential to create a network. For a wayfinding strategy to be successful, there must be no danger of losing a basic form of orientation, combined with little bursts of confusion or surprises. This format keeps one mentally and emotionally active. As mentioned earlier, people receive their wayfinding cues by receiving and interpreting environmental images. These images emphasize what needs to be seen and are filtered through a perceptual input in a constant interactive process. During this research, it was decided that monuments would be organized according to their chronological period, their architectural features, and most importantly by the way they have been positioned within the urban plan. On the one hand are the buildings that are visible from a distance and can easily be reached due to their imposing location, and on the other hand are the buildings that are hidden and are more complicated to reach. The city of Thessaloniki is home to both of these types of monuments, which is why it presents an extra challenge for the creation of monument networks, and hence will be the focus of the last section of this paper. Moving on, While cities are growing and evolving, cultural assets need to remain unaffected through time in order for the city to retain its cultural identity. A historic city can also be a modern city, but what will always characterize it is its historicity, and that is usually where its reputation lies. Therefore, historic cities need to transfer facts of early civilizations to the following generations, such as customs, lifestyle, art, architectural heritage, physical view, life values, and aesthetic sensibility as symbols of the past. Historic cities having their unique physical and visual perceptions are also important in the sense that they make people psychologically relaxed and culturally satisfied. Therefore, the historic buildings and their surrounding environment need to be preserved and highlighted in order to achieve that. At the same time, there is a strong relation between environment and perception. The visual value of the environment makes it livable. Urban formations which are not planned and oriented may cause chaos and deformation of the character of the historic structures. Urban lighting plays an important role in shaping the image and experience of a city. Considering the fact that cities were built under daylight and all functions took place during daytime, urban lighting is a fascinating discovery, as it enables cities to redefine their function during the night. It also allows people to move around safely in the dark by expanding their activities and socializing, thus offering the opportunity to locals and visitors to delve into the city's history and identity. As Lynch constantly mentions the significance of sensory cues from the external environment in wayfinding, proposing a consistent lighting design strategy to create a monument network seems only appropriate. Lighting foremost contributes to a city's legibility by providing a sense of security and communicating positive emotional connotations. Furthermore, light is essential in the creation of mental maps because it helps identify nested area systems. That is why using a common lighting language on monuments through a city's historic center is crucial in creating mental maps for more efficient and successful wayfinding within the urban narrative. Another key element is the special atmosphere and character of a city that is created when urban lighting is applied. Nocturnal lighting has the ability to catch the attention of the passers-by and reveal an aspect of reality that can be very different from the daytime image. It has the capacity to deflect the attention away from imperfections, emphasize the important elements of a city, and convert it into a destination. If a common design language was used, which would create a network of historic buildings in an urban environment, the character of the city would be further enhanced. Additionally, if there was the corresponding connection between these highlighted buildings and the paths leading to them, then we will be talking about a unified lighting network strategy. We will now move on to a brief analysis of 3 case studies. The main goal of all the interventions mentioned below was the highlighting of a historic area and aiming to create an attraction within the city. These were implemented either for marketing in the case of Shanghai purposes or tourist or historic purposes in the cases of Bremen and Strasbourg. First we have Shanghai's Bund. Shanghai, being the host of the International Import Expo, needed to renovate the lighting of the historic part of the city, the Bund, in order to create a symbolic image for its citizens and visitors. The main scope of the project was to connect the buildings and their architecture with people, in order for them to feel and appreciate it. The main design principles were the highlighting of the architectural features of the historic facades, classical architecture of the 1930s by using warm white tunable LEDs. The whole installation was linked to the same control system in order for all the buildings of the waterfront to interact together in unity. The project can produce dynamic shows moving along the waterfront and at the same time reveal the architecture, taking into account the ambient light in the area. The final result is extremely homogeneous and constitutes a work of art for the city of Shanghai. The historic part of the city retained its golden color which the citizens and visitors were used to seeing in the past, and the moving image creates a statement for the city, providing at the same time relaxation and excitement. Next we have the city of Bremen's lighting master plan. The historic city of Bremen, Germany, had been lit following a uniform lighting master plan. The main idea was to emphasize the architectural qualities of the city center in order to facilitate the orientation of the citizens and for the visitors to feel comfortable going out at night and at the same time creating a pleasant atmosphere that typifies Bremen. The lighting scheme builds on the great density of the significant facades and by lighting specific viewpoints guides people from one side to the next. Lighting was applied to the gables and facades of the historic buildings and also to the small-scale lighting of the most important buildings of the city, such as the town hall, the cathedral, and the Church of Our Lady. The whole city appears at night as one entity of buildings, squares, and streets that have been lit according to the master plan. This provides the city with a sense of structure and orientation, and at the same time defines its focus points. Also, the high lighting of the building facades contributes significantly to the spatial effect of the squares. Warm white color temperature was mainly applied either from a distance or by highlighting the architectural features of the buildings. Bremen is a city where the citizen or visitor feels safe and oriented, while all buildings, squares, and streets are lit according to a unified design, by separating the most important parts of it through their highlighting. Also, the luminous contrast between the buildings and their surrounding environment has led to the identification of monuments from a distance. And lastly, we have the Grand Ile in Strasbourg, which consists of the historic city center that is built around the Gothic cathedrals, while the new city, Neustadt, is a reminder of German inspiration following the layout of the Haldmanian model. This mixture of influences is displayed at the Grand Ile, a UNESCO World Heritage Site that was decided to be highlighted in order to create a coherent view to the city's public lighting, while at the same time inviting tourists and citizens to rediscover the area. LED lighting with a wide range of white and colored lights was used in order to accentuate the different architectural details of buildings, squares, and bridges. The unified lighting plan aimed at revitalizing the city, enhancing its heritage and creating a more attractive view for tourists visiting the area through the use of light and shadow, while also inviting the citizens themselves to rediscover the area. Grand Ile's dark areas have been turned into beautiful lighting formations at night, while the most important buildings and sites, such as the cathedral, the Museum of History, the old houses, and the Place du Château, stand out showing the different European interventions through time. These unified lighting interventions provide interesting pathways to citizens, while the reflection of light through water create a stunning view. However, the concept of wayfinding is not mentioned in the description of any of these projects. Nonetheless, it is a concept closely related to many parameters taken into account in these particular cases, such as orientation, safety, and path information within a historic city, which are signified through lighting during the night. In all three cases, the interventions regard to either the highlighting of specific buildings or the whole area. In the case of Shanghai, the total of the waterfront is considered a unity, without a distinction between important and less important structures. In Bremen and Strasbourg cases, the buildings are distinguished based on their significance, something which is evident within the lighting interventions. This approach helps a person create an order in their mind, a mental map, one could say, and organize them according to specific parameters, for example, historicity or significance. Moving on to our prototype, Thessaloniki is the second largest city in Greece, located in the northern region of Central Macedonia. Named after the sister of Alexander the Great, it has a long and turbulent history of 2,500 years due to its strategic location. It has always been considered an integral port to the Balkan Peninsula, as well as a gateway to the Near East. The city became part of the modern Greek state in 1912, almost a century after the liberation of the southern part of the country from the Ottomans. The catalytic event responsible for its contemporary appearance and civic plan was the detrimental fire of 1917, which ruined most of the city's center. Following this tragic event, Then Prime Minister Eleftherios Venizelos hired French architect Ernest Lebrun, who redesigned the city according to Western city prototypes. Among other things, his plan was to create wide boulevards, many open green spaces, rectangular city blocks, and a unified neo-Byzantine aesthetic among the new administrative and business quarter of the city. However, what is of greater significance in relation to this research is the fact that he wanted to create large openings where monuments would be clearly visible from various points of view, and open roads which link the monuments between them. Unfortunately, he didn't manage to complete his grand scheme, so his ideas were only partially implemented. Parts of his plans were scrapped or modified completely between 1920 to 1924 due to the constant changes in government and the unforeseen arrival of hundreds of thousands of refugees from Asia Minor in 1922. The new city planners only used a few churches as visual reference points, but other than that largely disregarded the city's rich monumental past. The research analysis focuses on buildings that are significant samples of various historic periods and played a major role in the city's history. After on-site observation, it was noted that their lighting during the night is either restricted to each specific building, sometimes even partially, or at best to the structure and its surrounding environment. In certain cases, the historic sites are left in complete darkness. As a result, the lighting design approach of the monuments is fragmented and there is no cohesion between them. The buildings selected to be part of the lighting network belong to three important historic periods: Roman, Byzantine, and Ottoman. These particular eras were chosen as the focus of this research mainly due to their major contribution to the development and enhancement of Thessaloniki's history and culture. Furthermore, they have a continuous nature between them and their traces are clearly visible throughout the city. The city's historic center is demarcated on three sides by its Byzantine walls. In the north, east, and west, and on the south by the Thessaloniki Gulf. Through this research, it has become evident that within the urban ensemble, many buildings of various historic periods coexist, some more visible than others. The proposal to create a unified monument network can help connect the structures of the same period, but more importantly the monuments of different eras. Through this approach, a single web focused both on the monuments themselves and on the routes that lead to and link them. This way a person, local or visitor, can further comprehend the historic value of the monuments and the interrelation between them in terms of their connection to the history of the place, the architecture of each period, and the significance of their position within the urban environment. With the creation of a uniformly lit wayfinding network, the following can be achieved. 1. The unification between the monuments within the urban cityscape. 2. The perceptual and physical correlation between the monuments becomes more evident. 3. Through clearer orientation, a sense of safety and security is generated, and as a consequence, an interest for further exploration and socializing can be triggered. And 4. The historic city center becomes more legible, offering a more cohesive urban nightscape and thus more memorable for locals and visitors. This proposal could include a different lighting design approach for the buildings of each historic period in order for the interrelation between them between the buildings of the same era to be more perceptible. Additionally, this way, the architecture of each period and its characteristic features will be clearly emphasized. Walking between these monuments, people can create their own perceptual path and guide themselves through it, comprehending in their own unique way and rhythm the history of the city, thus creating a personal reading of it. Thank you very much for your time and attention.